Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Atheist Roundtable. Gonna have another great episode here tonight. We have two guests tonight. So first, my name's Austin, as you know, one of the regular hosts here, and I have for the first time as my co-host, known on TikTok as Uncle Steve Z. But this is another brother in arms. Steve, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing fantastic. How about yourself?
I'm doing great, man. Got a lot of stuff done today here behind the scenes for the roundtable. So we're doing a lot of really great special things, and things are building up. And we're gonna be kicking some ass. And then our guest for the evening at the roundtable, taking his seat, Ethan Lawless. How are you, my man?
I am actually doing pretty good. Been feeling all right the last couple of days. It's a little sore, but bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
Good.
Good. And we're happy to have you, excited to have you, and to get a peek into your life story and what's got you to where you're at today. And we'll get that into that here in a minute. But before we do that, I always like to say thank you to everyone that listens live, but even after the fact, the comments we get, people that come and check out the videos and the content after the fact. You guys, as I say every episode, you guys are the true rock stars, and you're the ones that really make this thing continue to go forward. And we appreciate the support. So thank you very much. And as I said last night, our merchandise has been ordered, first round of T-shirts and things to be able to start distributing. And really, what the revenue for that that will be put back into the show as far as microphones. And if you've watched the last two episodes, you know that my camera has been shitty as hell. So making sure that I have good, dependable camera. It's probably important that the hosts have good, dependable cameras. I would think in this whole podcast thing. But
you know what? You look great either way, bud.
Oh, thanks, Steve. So we have that, and then we'll get this posted here. I know I'll post it myself here because I know Mike is working on a couple things for me in the background, but I'll put this here on the screen. So this is our Patreon account. If you would like to support us and what we're doing, and kind of taking a different approach to the Atheist podcast, and really making it get to know you, conversation based, and then really challenging beliefs and worldviews and things like that at the end of the discussions, the end of the episodes. We would love to we'd love to have your help, and we got some things that are listed there in return. If you you make that commitment to help us, we want to make commitments to you to make it worth your while, make it worth your investment. So please go check that out. We'll leave that link up there here for a minute, and we're excited, like I said, to be getting the ball really rolling, and it's exciting. In the background, we'll be sharing more about that here in the future. But again, Steve, thanks tonight for joining us and being my co-host tonight. I know you and I will handle it and kick some ass tonight, and it's great to have Ethan here, like I said. So Ethan, in the pre-call, I kind of walked you through the format and what it looks like. But again, for any viewers that join us tonight that may not be familiar with the roundtable format, we start out with the life story, kind of the what's happened and what's going on in your life, and then we'll go through the how you arrive to where you're at, and then the why. And that's usually when it gets fun, is when we get to the why, because that's when that's where the decision unfolds. Why you believe what you believe, or why you don't believe in a certain thing. So that being said, again, thank you very much for being here, Ethan, and take 5-10 minutes if you need that, whatever you feel comfortable with, to take that time. But share your life story with us. Let us know, from childhood up till present day, what has made Ethan the man he is today.
Well, in a lot of ways, I don't really think I had much of a childhood. I mean, to be very honest with you, there was just an immense amount of abuse that came from specific people in my life very early on. And it didn't stop there. As a result of a lot of that, I ended up being a very angry teenager and ended up in and out of juvie quite a bit. My life story is kind of it's tragic, to be perfectly honest. Beyond that, as far as how I found myself where I am now, it was an interesting process. In becoming an atheist, I dealt with two things specifically. When I was a teenager and I was angry, and I was realizing, I realized at some point, as I think a lot of people do, if they have any kind of introspection, what I was doing wasn't working. And so I tried very hard to get into religion, and I read the Bible habitually. I think from the age of about 10, 11 years old up until I was about 16, it was a preoccupation. I stopped believing about the time I was 13, but for whatever reason, I think there was a large part of me that wanted it to be true. And so I continued to read the Bible up until I was about 16, 17 years old. And it just didn't add up to me. The Bible was, to be perfectly honest, the God of the Bible is very horrible. He is a very immoral character, and did very horrible things. It's actually a common question that I ask theists. How many people did God murder in the Bible versus how many people did Satan murder in the Bible? And overwhelmingly, those numbers fall on God's side. And then another thing that drew me away from religion was the behavior of Christians, how they act. And I tried very hard for a very long time to understand why they behave the way they do. And so it kind of led me into like an anthropological wormhole. You start to kind of see a lot of arrogance tied up into a system of belief that tells other people what they're supposed to do, even if they don't believe it, even if they have their own religious beliefs. Christianity will still demand that everybody follows Christians' dogma. And that behavior I found to be a lot of things: disingenuous, disrespectful, and it's not somebody I really wanted to be when I became an adult. So it was another reason for me dropping the kind of religious hokey pokey nonsense. I didn't really identify as an atheist until probably my early 20s, because obviously atheism had a bad connotation. It was a bad word when I was growing up as a kid. I was a child at the end of the Satanic Panic. I mean, honestly, atheism came with a lot of bad connotations. So I didn't really tie into that until I really did my research and understood what atheism really was. And for me, atheism is simply the rejection of the God claim. It is not the positive position that there is no God. Beyond that, activism became a thing when I stumbled across George Carlin, and then I stumbled across Christopher Hitchens and Matt Dillahunty and Seth Andrews and the Puzzle and a Thunderstorm boys and the Cog Disc boys, and and that's when atheist activism became a real thing for me, something that I kind of wanted to be a part of, because when you dive into this and you start to really see the consequences that religion has on the general population of any given society, you really start seeing the suffering that it causes, the pain that it causes, the unnecessary death that it causes, from a place of ignorance or a lack of education in a given system. Medical being one of those. Some of the worst stories I can remember recalling are, there was one family, and I can't remember exactly where they lived. It might have been Georgia. And they had, I think, a total of 6 kids. 4 of their children died from curable diseases like pneumonia before the federal government or the state government stepped in and said, no, you're going to prison for manslaughter, and took the other 2 children away and put them in safe homes. Like, it had to get to that point because of religious freedom. It had to get to that point. 4 kids out of 6 had to die before somebody said something, because religious freedom. And that to me is disgusting. It is horrible. And for that reason alone, there is no chance of me ever being a theist. Tomorrow, God could present himself to the world, and I wouldn't take a knee to him. So, I mean, that's kind of my story up to this point.
So, I suppose I got a couple of questions right off the bat. What was it at the age of 13? Was there like a pinnacle moment or something that happened that got you to lose your faith or changed your mind or convinced you otherwise?
Yeah, for the most part, I can't ever really remember buying into religion even as a child. It seemed outrageous to me. But I believed it and I was a part of it mostly, I think, because I wanted to make my family happy. Like, my favorite person in my family has always been my grandmother, and she's religious, and I always wanted to impress her. But I got to the age of confirmation, and I'm the oldest of 4 kids. Of all 4 of us, I'm the only one that has not been confirmed because I dropped out. I remember asking my pastor why they didn't teach the book of Revelations in Sunday school. Why have I only ever heard these happy stories about Jesus and all this other stuff, but I've never heard this very dark side of this religion until now? And he said that they didn't want to scare children. My obvious question was, because that's the way I was taught, was, aren't we supposed to fear and love God in his awesome power? Well, absolutely, you're right, he said to me. The pastor said, you're right, but we don't want to scare them away from the church. And for whatever reason, at that moment, it clicked that this is a business. You're selling an invisible product. You need customers in order to keep this bullshit a-rolling. And I just stopped. I stopped attending.
Well, and I suppose the truth is the truth, whether it's scary or not, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if it's the truth, then why should we hide any part of it, really?
Yeah, exactly. And it was also one of those moments where I realized that Christians like to pick and choose what they're going to teach from the Bible, and that's going to vary between denomination. And you could have 2 people in the same church who are going to argue about a passage out of a specific book. So there's no real standard ground that these people walk on. It's all just swampland.
Right. And Ethan, you said so it was about 12, 13 years old. You had that experience, and then you indicated about 10 years ago or so is when you came to that. Okay, I'm an atheist, and I find no good reason to believe that there is a God. Doesn't mean we hold the stance, or you hold the stance that there is no God. It's just we don't have good enough evidence to suggest or prove that God exists. Now, you obviously growing up in a theistic family, what kind of, or if you did at all, what kind of pushback did you get from your family as you got older? At 12, 13, it's a little tougher, but as you got older, what kind of pushback have you got from your family?
Ironically enough, I did not get any pushback about dropping out of confirmation. I thought for sure my mom would throw a shit fit over that, but she really didn't. I don't think there was a lot of argument about it. I've never really got a lot of pushback from my family until I had already came out as an atheist. I think I was it was right when I was in my mid-20s when I came out as an atheist, and I kind of took that role. I remember being at Christmas one year, and my uncle's wife and my grandmother were sitting in the one room with me and my 2 children. And she had my daughter up on her lap, and my grandmother asked me if I had my kids in Sunday school. And I said, no, I don't. And she asked me why. And I said, well, mostly because I'm an atheist. And the look on her face, man, my aunt's face was priceless. There has never been a time in my life where I wish I didn't have a camera more, because I wanted to capture that moment forever. And I felt a little bit guilty in the sense that I felt like I was disappointing my grandmother. But I didn't come from a fundamentalist kind of home. I came from like a half-assed liberal Methodist home, where my grandfather was Methodist and we attended Methodist church. My grandmother herself is actually Lutheran, and I wasn't aware of that until I was already in my 30s. After my grandfather passed, my grandmother left the Methodist church and went to the Lutheran. But she is very much the anti-gay rights kind of Christian because it's against God, that kind of stuff. She won't preach it. She's a sweet lady. Like, she keeps that kind of shit to herself. But that's kind of her. There's no fundamentalism. It's just, here's a mild expectation. So I didn't really get a lot of blowback coming out of religion. But I do feel and I do understand, and I have empathy for those who have that blowback. It's rough stuff.
So I had another quick question. So you mentioned the behavior of Christians that you had experienced, particularly after the age of 13, after that confirmation event. What kind of experiences did you have that kind of ended up pushing you a little bit further away?
This is going to speak to your and my friendship a little bit.
Okay.
I went through that goth stage with the ICP and the bondage pants and the the gory graphic T-shirts, and I was friends with a couple of people. I think I was probably about 23 or 24 years old. I was friends with a couple of people, and they invited me to a Catholic mass. As soon as I walked in the building, the ushers kicked me out. And then you always, when I'm trying to educate myself, I think like a lot of atheists will do this. They'll put themselves in the uncomfortable position to have to, how would you word it? Play devil's advocate. At some point, you're going to read a Christian apologetic book. You're going to attend a Christian or otherwise religious service to kind of get an idea of what this is. I need to know more about this. And as a result of that, I was kind of doing that thing. I wanted to try to put myself in the position to learn more about these things that I didn't know anything about. And at that time, I really didn't know anything about Catholicism. And they didn't even really let me kind of attend. They just pushed me out of the building. You see Christians on TV, predominantly well-to-do white people with this holier-than-thou attitude, as though they're the special one in the room, and this almighty power has a message specifically for them, and this happy, safe space specifically for them. And it's arrogance, really. And I think that just comes with the theology itself. I don't think that inherently these people are arrogant. I think their belief system and ideology makes them that way.
Sure. I guess another question, you had said that after having lost Christianity, there's kind of a 10-year gap, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere around there. Did you end up having any other kind of beliefs system
yeah,
in the interim?
Yeah, I floated through a lot of BS. I floated through witchcraft, where I tried to astral project, where I called upon the towers of north, south, east, and west, and I did all kinds of other. I fell in. There's one other atheist I know of that admits to this, and it's No Illusions from the Scathing Atheist, where he went through this kind of witchcraft stage. I did that very same thing. I tried to cast spells. I mean, I had the what the hell's the name of it? Book of Shadows. I had the Book of Shadows, which is the witchcraft, like basically Bible. And I fell into that BS for a few years, and then I fell into Buddhism for a few years, and I never got back into any of the Abrahamic religions, but I did mess around quite a bit with some supernatural pseudoscience, nonsensical BS for a little while, and I eventually came out of it because I realized, hey, this is dumb. It doesn't work. It's bullshit. It's a harsh realization to come to I'm not sure it's this way for everybody, but for me, it was a harsh realization to come to that magic doesn't actually exist in this world. It's not a real thing. And that was, to me, I remember very vividly feeling disappointed in that there was no magic in the world, that reality wasn't built on that foundation. Because magic think makes things like, how do you put it? How does that frame of mind work? It puts things in this one perspective where you truly, truly, truly believe that anything is possible. Where reality kind of has limits to what is possible. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. And it's a good thing you didn't find the Necronomicon, because we all know the only actual book that has real magic, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I did not get into that stuff. All of after I got away from Christianity, all of the supernatural belief systems I tried to build for myself were supposed to be based on goodness. Like when I watch movies, I'm always rooting for the hero. I don't watch horror flicks. I hate them because 9 times out of 10, the bad guy wins.
Sure.
And so, and that has like a real effect on my mood. Like I can get very depressed if I watch like Michael Myers survive an otherwise fatal attack. And so all of those systems I tried to build were supposed to be happy, 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 happy ones. Hippie was too clean, was too loose, noodly, weird. So I never fell into the hippie variation of things, and I never fell into like spiritualism. But yeah, I mean, I've always tried to build a system that was where its core foundation was try to be happy. So Necronomicon was not something I was about to dive into.
Sure. And I think you brought up a really. Oh yeah, go ahead, Austin.
Go ahead. Nope, go ahead, Steve. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think you brought up a really, really good point that I haven't even considered, and I don't know how many people have actually considered this, but how far is too far in regards to religious freedom when it comes to children? Because as much as a lot of people would like to think, children are not our property. Our children are not our property. They are human beings, and they do deserve rights.
I'm
right?
I'm a huge advocate for the concept of being required to have a license to be a parent. And I honestly see any religious teachings, aside from the educational standpoint, okay, here's 6 different religions, here's what these people believe, now we're moving on to George Washington. I see religious teachings as child abuse in general, and especially from the Christian standpoint, where you're teaching a child that, you know what, because you're a human being, you are less than, you are broken, you are a sinner, everything about you is wrong, you don't deserve heaven, you don't deserve good things in your life, because you need to kiss God's ass. I find that to be absolute abuse. I find it to be horrible and disgusting behavior. And it really does kind of it breaks my heart to see a child raised in that kind of setting.
Absolutely. And Steve, thanks for bringing that up, because that was on my notes as well. Because, well, you gentlemen are on TikTok. Last 30 or 60 days, one of my driving biblical stories has been the story of Abraham and Isaac, and I think that is a point in case.
Yeah, it's kind of a telling thing.
Yeah, that God the God of the Bible will ask just about anything to test your love and loyalty if he were real. And I tell people all the time, if you take that in modern day terms, as far as somebody requesting another father to do that to one of his sons, it's sadistic, it's psychopathic, it's narcissistic.
Well, I mean,
so many.
It really does tie into the narrative when he sacrifices Jesus, right? Like, Jesus is supposed to be the Son of God. The whole entire premise of this entire religion is arcane. It's built on blood and human sacrifice. That's something that should absolutely, by itself, disqualify any religion.
Yep. Nope. Totally agree with you. But having two biological sons and now a bonus son, that is something that, well, I say all the time, I don't care whose God it is, or if it was a human being that said, hey, to prove your love and your loyalty to me, I'm going to need you to bury this knife or whatever into one of your son's chest. I'm going to tell you to fuck you and go fuck yourself.
Yeah,
that's not going to happen. So, so Steve, thanks for bringing that up, and that's a very fair observation. And
well,
those are part of the reasons that we push back against that book.
Well, there's another point to be made about this. You can see it kind of in a modern sense where, and I noticed this on TikTok. There are people who want to peddle this Pizzagate conspiracy, this underground child rape ring bullshit, yet not one person speaks out against the Catholic Church. And they're publicly raping children. The Australian government just released George Pell, for fuck's sake. I mean, there's an issue with kids and religion, and it's so hard to kind of nail it down. And because there's this religious freedom bullshit, nobody pays any attention to it. Religion has this privilege about it that apparently keeps it above the law. And it's just very painful to watch.
Yeah, and being a businessman myself, I've often talked to people in my sphere of influence that if it was any other business, and I say business, if it was any other business than the Catholic Church, that business would have been 10 feet under, not 6, 10 feet under, bankrupt, demolished, to never be seen again.
Oh, absolutely. There'd be like a RICO federal case brought against it.
Everybody involved would be in prison. Absolutely.
Yep. So the fact that we have this business, this organization that gets to hide behind a book and hide behind a faith, and all of these young people have to suffer and be traumatized and fucked up for their entire life because a bunch of old men can't keep their dicks in their pants. And they get to do it in the name of religion. I have no time for that shit.
Right, and that's
again,
that speaks to the dichotomy where you have people saying that atheism is a religion and atheism killed billions of people or millions of people, and I'm like, no, that's not how this works. Nobody in the history of mankind has murdered another person or raped a child in the name of atheism. That's not how this functions. But this shit happens as a direct result of a belief in a God, a theism, an organized system. So
well, I'll say this, and then we'll just for time's sake, because I want to respect everybody's time, we'll move on to the next question here with you, Ethan. But I've actually had a lot of people after the Abraham and Isaac story hit me with that. Well, atheism has caused more deaths and more murders in the entire world. Okay. If you want to make that claim, first of all, you got to prove it. But if you want to make that claim, cool. I'll even grant you. That that's true. Just because I want for shits and giggles, right? I'll say it's true. The problem is you have a God that annihilated the population of the fucking planet twice. So now what?
Yeah. And on top of that, he demanded the death of firstborn children, killed 42 children with bears for bullying somebody, a bald dude. The first case of infanticide and abortion was God flooding the planet. So, I mean, in all honesty, the double standard that religious people have for their God in comparison to what they have for people on earth is kind of ridiculous.
Well,
it's amazing.
Not only that, but if we were gonna, sorry, Austin, if we're going to even say that 100% of murders, deaths, rapes, thievery, everything is 100% caused by atheist or atheism, does it still mean that theistic beliefs are true? It has
No.
nothing to do with it.
It doesn't.
Nope. And at the end of the day, it's if you're going to make bold claims about somebody doing something in the name of atheism, I'm always going to come back to your Bible God. I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm not even going to include all the other religions. Well, and that do fucked up shit. I'm just going to go to your Bible God and say that he loves blood. He loves slavery. He loves punishing people.
Sacrifice.
and he loves, and he, and I know back in the Bible days, they didn't even know what this term was, but the Bible, the God of the Bible is the master of gaslighting.
Oh, absolutely.
Master. And that is one of the most fucked up things you can do to a human's brain is gaslighting. And he was the master manipulator of gaslighting. So that being said, we can go on and on, but I'll make sure we stay on track and respect everybody's time. So Ethan, first and foremost, thank you for sharing your, at least a summarized part of your, or a summarized version of your life story with us tonight. And the listeners, we truly appreciate that. And anytime somebody comes on and they're candid about it, we appreciate it.
I do appreciate you guys listening and giving me the time to speak. Very much so.
Absolutely. And so before we go to the how you got to where you're at, I'm gonna go out on a slight limb and take a shot in the dark and throw shit against the wall and see if it sticks. But sir, I'm going to guess that you're an atheist.
Oh, just a little bit.
man, I'm good.
How'd you ever?
It's so we went through the story, and some of the things that impact us in our early stages. Sometimes we don't even realize it till we're adults. Like, oh man, that shit happened, and I didn't realize it. Kind of fucked with my head until now. So sometimes it helps us to talk through that, and sometimes these episodes are therapeutic for everybody involved, even myself. To go through and talk about those things, but. As far as the how, Ethan, so you shared your life story, like I said, about the dead horse, and obviously today your stance as a man is you are an atheist, and for anybody that doesn't listen or isn't familiar, atheism, don't let, I'm gonna be nice, don't let some of these folks fool you into thinking that atheism is something that it's not. Atheism is simply the lack of belief in a God, a higher authority, a higher being. We're not claiming that we know that there's nothing. That to me is arrogant and ignorant.
And something else that I think should be absolutely understood about being an atheist, we don't get along on everything. I've met atheists that are racists, that are misogynistic. I've met atheists that believe in a flat earth. Just because, and that's that's what shows you that atheism isn't a worldview. It's just one position on one subject. But people confuse this with all this other stuff. If I had to label myself anything, it's going to be an atheist because I reject a God claim, a humanist because I think that if humans really do come together and have faith in each other rather than in magical sky daddies, we could do a lot more good in the world. And I'm a secularist because I don't mind people having beliefs. I only mind when it becomes a problem for other people because of those beliefs. So I'm an atheist, humanist, secularist, or an atheist, secular humanist.
Fair enough. Nope, fair enough. So what I want now, Ethan, is like I said, the last segment will be the why, which we'll dive in a little deeper on that one. But so you shared up through Catholicism, and then you dabbled in some other things, trying to find that purpose or the fulfillment, that because as humans we're trying to find happiness, right? I think that's the ultimate pursuit of the human race. But how did you get through those experiences mentally? How did you navigate to this destination? How did you get to atheism?
Believe it or not, the answer is just Occam's razor. Like honestly, that's the simplest, easiest answer to give to that question. It's when I ask a question, what is the simplest and most obvious answer to any given problem, it leads me more away from the supernatural because we can't describe or understand what that is. We have no evidence for it. We can't test it. So there's no reason to jump into that rabbit hole. Reality, on the other hand, is much more simple. I mean, it's complex in and of itself, but it's the simplest answer. It doesn't require extremes. Reality is pretty simple. So Occam's razor would probably be the best answer to that question. Me trying to find my own path of least resistance.
Okay, and was it because that's what I love about this roundtable setup is literally every single person's story or version of conversion, deconversion, searching, looking, all of that is going to look, sound, feel, smell different, right? And that's what I love about doing this format. Was it, and I mean this honestly, I'm not being a smartass at all, was it that as far as you having that path to it, was it that simple for Ethan? Was it that easy?
Honestly, yeah, I think so. I don't recall really having too much of a struggle with it. I was never emotionally invested in the supernatural to begin with. It was an idea that I put to test and it failed. I mean, I tested it. And here's the thing. When I came out as an atheist and I started really discovering people like Christopher Hitchens and Seth Andrews and Matt Dillahunty, when I started discovering these people, they were mirroring thoughts back to me in their debates, in their discussions that I was already having on my own. All of this shit had already occurred to me before I got into this. And I find a lot of this double-edged sword. I find a lot of happiness in these discussions for myself. And I also find a lot of frustration because one of the things I hate doing is repeating myself. I do not like having to repeat myself in a debate or a conversation with somebody. But I still find my happiness in this. And I still find a lot of purpose in it. But I can't honestly say I really struggled to get to this point. If I had any struggle, it was having to sit down and pay attention to people like Kent Hovind, or having to listen to Ken Ham spew his idiocy. Having to put up with it is probably the struggle for me. Past that, I think I had a fairly easy pathway into atheism.
Well, I think I know where you're coming from on that because, a lot of the time we have some really great people that we can have awesome discussions with. But a lot of times when you're constantly trying to go up against a brick wall, it gets frustrating.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to lose your cool.
Yeah.
And one thing, Ethan, one thing I'd offer you just from a humanistic standpoint, because all of us on the atheist roundtable, and including you as our guest as an atheist tonight, we aren't trying to convert people. Like, we don't have a religion, we don't have a belief. What we're trying to do is help people find truth.
Right.
What is your standard of evidence? What is the evidence? And have you identified truth? And if you can demonstrate and show that your evidence points to a God, then we can have a different conversation. But until then, you and I are probably, and I know Steve and most of the guys that I talk to on a daily basis are kind of cut from this cloth, where it's like we're not we're results driven, individuals.
No, we're not.
So when we talk, we don't want to have to repeat ourselves. We want you to get it the first time. Right?
Yeah,
that's what we want. But here's the problem with the human brain: that doesn't happen.
No, it doesn't.
So what I have to keep in the back of my mind when I'm talking to people, as fucking frustrated as I get, just like you communicate that you do, is that, and I'm dead serious, I get it. It's crazy, but repetition is the father of learning.
Yeah. Absolutely, that's true. And you're not going to get anywhere if you're not mimicking somebody who came before you. All ideas are repetitions of somebody else's ideas. We build upon them. We make them better, or we find a better way to argue them. And I understand that. My frustration comes from the argument that if you don't have God, you can't have morals. I can't remember how many times I've had to deal with this, how many times I've had to have this argument, and I shouldn't have to, because it's obvious when you look at my life and how I treat people, and or look at just any atheist's life and how they may treat somebody. It's intentional ignorance to say that an atheist doesn't have morals, that they can't be a moral person, and that Christianity somehow has the lockdown on moral guidance. It really does irritate the hell out of me to have that conversation again and again and again, like 4 or 5 times a day. I will have to correct try to correct somebody's thinking. You're right. People don't just, it takes a while to become unconvinced of something you've been convinced of. Cognitive dissonance is a real thing. But when I have to repeat it so many times, it does get frustrating. And I understand that that's part of the game.
Well, especially when the morality that you're up against is so obviously immoral.
Oh, absolutely.
Saying that slavery is okay and you can beat your slaves as much as you want as long as they get up after a couple of days, or that women are to be subservient to men, that it's okay to rape women as long as you pay 50 shekels and marry them. I mean, there's so many different just deplorable acts that are totally condoned. But if you wear mixed fabrics, go fuck yourself, right? or eat shellfish. Hard no.
Yeah. That leads to the point of the ignorance of the God in the first place, and the contradictions within the system. Understanding that this is not the inspired word of God, but this is the bullshit ramblings of a bunch of people who just barely learned how to write, much less understand what nature was, or even begin to explain a simple thing like a rainstorm.
And people who could benefit from manipulating everybody in that way.
Oh, absolutely. And I think a religion in and of itself, as it started with the original gods, the concept that we didn't understand what made waves crash or lightning strike. And we gave agency to these things because we couldn't possibly understand them. And it qualmed our fears. It was our very first attempt at trying to understand nature and deal with our fear at the same time. But somewhere along the lines, and I'm going to go ahead and blame Abrahamic religions because they seem to be the ones that are the most responsible for it, it became a system of abuse, of control, and of greed, and whatever you want to call it. It became a negative system. We went from trying to understand nature to trying to control people and label people as us versus them, haves and have-nots. And the tribal mentality became relatively hardcore at that point, where those Abrahamic religions started to take over. And so you hear thy Bible is the best-selling book in all of human history. Yeah, because it came at the point of a sword and the threat of death or torture. It's not popular because it's right or it's correct. It's popular because if you didn't believe it at a certain point in history, you were going to get killed or tortured.
You bring up a really, really good point, and that is that people inherently want to know the answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Want to know what the answer is to everything, which is where the God of the gaps fallacy comes from to begin with.
Yeah.
You have, I don't know where thunder comes from, so it must be some sort of God.
Steve, that's what Google's for.
Yeah, Google has everything, right? Yeah, we now we got it all figured out.
The problem with Google is that it also contains Ken Hovind and Ken Ham and all their bullshit.
Yeah. Jinx, you owe me a Coke.
Bring your ass to Texas, I'll get you one.
Or when you come back up to Minnesota.
Oh God, maybe. You
might have to get your health order.
So to wrap up the how, gentlemen, you know, and well, not necessarily the how, but I completely understand how you got there, Ethan. But to wrap up that part of the conversation as far as morality, which can turn into a complete fucking rabbit hole. But here's what it is. If we're going to base our morality as a society, as you know, as a species, humans, we're going to base that on a book where we have a God that annihilates the population of the earth twice, is cool with slavery. It even says, as soon as you're not slaves of sin, you're now my slave. If that's the God we want to base our morality on, you can go ahead and have him. Even if you could prove he's real, I still won't serve him. I'll acknowledge that he's real if you have demonstrable evidence, but fuck your psychopathic God. You know,
there's a saying, I don't know who. There's a saying, and I don't know really where it comes from or where it's been quoted. It's lyrics of a song, and it's been said quite a bit. I would rather die on my feet than spend my life living on my knees. It's just that simple. Yeah. Any moral system is not going to require a form of worship, period, plain and simple. Especially if it's an all-knowing intellectual entity. Worship is, by definition, an immoral thing.
Yep. And again, the whole morality thing that could turn into a big old bowl of spaghetti, right? Where one parlays off the other.
Well, and so like kind of, I want to end my version on this with this simple thought. A lot of the apologetics I think we all get as atheists on the morality thing is that God wrote it in our hearts. You can automatically call bullshit on this because you live on a planet where there are so many different cultures that have their own variations, their own beliefs. There are tribes that cannibalize people, and that's a moral guide to them. That's a moral system to them. There are people who have been who have sacrificed other people, kids, virgin women, whatever, and then to a god to appease the gods so that they could get rain during a drought. There is no standard moral guide. Depending on the system, murder is acceptable. Depending on the system, rape is acceptable. And so I see morality as a process of evolution, where 100 years ago, it was a moral thing to beat a woman with a stick no larger than your thumb, hence the rule of thumb. That's not a moral thing anymore. Moralities have evolved over time because we as a species began to understand that the better we work together, the more successful we are as a species. It's just that simple. And that's all I got. That's the last thing I'll say about morality today. Well, for this portion of the discussion.
We could speak for hours on morality for sure.
Yeah, like I said, that can turn into a big old bowl of spaghetti. But,
that boiled for our sins.
We'll go to why. That verse of he wrote that shit on our heart. Like, I watch a lot of documentaries on like autopsies and surgeries, and I'm totally obsessed with that shit, right?
Yeah.
I've never once seen a verse wrote on somebody's fucking heart.
No shit.
Like, what the fuck are they talking about?
Maybe it's in cursive and you can't read it.
It's that metaphorical heart.
I can write cursive. I'm 38 years old. I still write in cursive, asshole.
They think that the heart is something that functions other than a muscle that pumps blood. They equivocate all of their supernatural love concepts and ideas to the heart. Nobody considers that the brain is what functions all of this bullshit, and the heart literally has nothing to do with it.
Yeah, brother, you and I could have a whole nother conversation about that, because that's my that's kind of my wheelhouse. I love studying the psychology of religion and what it does to the brain.
Oh yeah, and anthropology is a big thing.
When it's like, oh, it's my heart. No, it's not your fucking heart. It was your brain.
It's your brain dumping dopamine because you feel special in that moment. Guess what? Yeah, I get the same feeling from riding my Harley.
And there's a lower lobe in your brain that when you're having a religious experience, it shrinks And
Yeah.
it's the area of brain that controls logic and reason. Ooh, who would have fucking guessed that shit?
And ironically enough, they've also tied in that hyper-religiosity to the same behavioral patterns and markings in the brain that control psychopaths.
And addicts.
Addicts.
Yep.
The same parts of the brain that are active and alive during a religious experience are the same parts of the brain that are active and alive during drug use when somebody's considering manslaughter.
Yep. And they did brain scans playing praise and worship music with people, and it literally triggered the same reward center in the brain as crystal meth and cocaine and sex and rock and roll and all those things. So don't tell me it's your God, it's your fucking brain. Anyway, we're going to move on.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, there's a huge presupposition in there, right? Like, we don't know what the brain does and how it functions quite yet. We're still working on that. But they're sure as quick to jump to God. That's a huge God of the gap argument I see a lot these days. We don't know the first thing about the brain functions. We don't understand what personality is 100%. We do know that personality can come from a lot of things like environment, trauma, shit. Even part of it comes from your genetics. But they automatically jump to God with that stuff every time because science hasn't discovered it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where that's where, and Matt Delhoney was just talking about this the other day. That's where you know somebody is delusional versus they believe something. Because when it's delusional, it's just this like there's absolute it's this it's just out there.
Yeah,
and it's like nobody can, and I'm having
there's
my words for it, but nobody can touch it. Like
yeah,
you can't talk in or out of it. Where if you believe something, you can be convinced to not believe it.
Correct.
And that's the problem with that. Because here my point, what I was trying to get to in that is, guess what? In 2020, we have way more evidence to suggest that the brain is impacted and the brain determines those things than we do any God.
Oh, absolutely.
Period.
As a result of our lack of understanding in how the brain functions, I am not entirely convinced that free will is even a thing. I don't ever remember making the conscious decision to like the color black. I just do. I don't ever remember making the conscious decision to like a specific food or make the conscious decision to like a specific song or movie. I don't remember making these decisions. I just either like it or I don't.
You're spot on there too, because especially when it comes to things like belief, you don't choose your beliefs. You are either convinced of something or not.
Yeah.
Bar none. I mean,
I wouldn't say bar none to that exactly. I think there are people who willingly dive headfirst into this. And you could say it's like 12-step program, or maybe somebody who just one day wakes up and says, I feel guilty for having the things I have or doing the things I've done. And then they make that decision to say, okay, Jesus.
But was that maybe the thing that convinced them that going that route would be a good thing? Or is it possible that those beliefs are somewhat disingenuous?
I think every religious belief is disingenuous. I don't honestly think there's how do you put it? I think all religious belief comes from either a place of fear or extreme emotion. I do not think that there is a logical pathway to any religious belief or belief in supernatural anything. But again, we don't really understand enough about the brain. Right. I think that once we start diving, because like we did the Human Genome Project and it was wildly successful. The Human Genome Project actually was like the straw that broke the camel's back as far as evolution being a fact. But then we really have to sit down and we have to study the human brain. We really have to, as a species. I think that should be the next frontier alongside of space travel. understanding the human brain and how it works would kind of lend itself to our next stage of evolution.
Yeah.
And I would much rather see a group of a species be more like Vulcans, to be honest. I'm not even a Trekkie guy, but I love Vulcans because Vulcans, one, have emotions but control them, and two, are scientifically minded. Their whole purpose is discovery. I love that concept. And I put numbers to it. I would say the human race currently sits at like probably a 60-40 mix of intense emotion over intellectualism. And what I would like to see is more of a 49-51 mix of emotion to intellectualism. Because I think that if we lose all of our emotion, you're going to lose something that's quintessential about being human. But I also at the same time think that we can't be running our entire civilization off of an emotional response to stimuli. We have to be able to stop and think.
Emotions were definitely essential for our survival up until the point where we removed ourselves from the animal kingdom, essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, without an emotional response to something like a tiger running at you, or whatever it may be, we would not have made it this far.
My skin crawling every time I see a spider walk past me.
Exactly, and that all comes from a survival instinct, or the need to have our fears and all those kinds of things in order to survive. But we've kind of moved beyond that socially, and we've moved beyond that as far as our need to be able to avoid those things to a certain extent, obviously.
I tell people we're barely evolved mammals.
Yeah.
Because that's what we are.
We're just great apes.
Keep in mind, science is only what, 400 or 500 years old, if that. Modern science is like 75 years old. I mean, we've only barely begun to scratch the surface. And while we've made a lot of headway, dude, I think we got a long, long fucking way to go.
And
absolutely. And it's
go.
Yeah. Totally great conversation. I just want to make sure we get back on track here. So, the story and the how, and we can even went into morality and some other stuff there, but I think everybody that was a part, and hopefully the listeners had fun with that, because there's some entertaining stuff and some informative stuff there. But this is where we get down to the brass tacks, Ethan, and not just with you, but all of our guests. This is the part of the show that we love, and this is where we just get to break it down and chop it up and talk about the real shit. So,
well, bring it on, motherfucker.
The nitty gritty.
So Ethan, you've shared your life story, how you got there. You are a vocal atheist and an activist. So at this point, normally at the Atheist Roundtable, if it was a theist, we'd ask them, why do you believe in your God? Why do you believe in that power? But it's different tonight because it's a atheist. So tonight, my question to you, Ethan, is why do you find no good reason to believe in a God, or a deity?
At every corner you turn around, when you look at religion with an unbiased, without Jesus goggles, I like that term. When you look at, and yes, I pick on Christianity more. Why? Because I live in the United States, and that's the predominant religion here. I mean, Christianity is the predominant religion in the world. But if I lived in a country where it was mostly Islam, I would probably be doing this against Islam. It doesn't matter. But every time I turn around, there's one more horror that's there specifically as a result of religion or religious belief. It's inescapable. You turn around, like, it's just the other day, it was a couple weeks ago, I read an article about another school district here in Austin, Texas, that's going to install an abstinence-only sex education program in their K through 12 system. Actually, it's not even K through 12. It's more like 6th grade through 12th grade. This is something that initially took place in the early 90s. A lot of Southern Baptist and Lutheran churches lobbied on Congress to have a voluntary program for local school districts to teach abstinence-only sex education. Well, it's been about 30 to 35 years since this took place. So now we have school districts teaching abstinence-only sex education, and we know for an absolute fact that this system leads to higher teen pregnancy and STD rates amongst our youth. We know that this is a fact. It's a direct result of abstinence-only sex education. And this only comes about through religious ways of thinking. The idea that, or the fact that one out of every 11 hospitals in this country is owned by the Catholic Church, and they have medical policies based on their religious beliefs that cost people lives, that cost people money, that cost people any number of things. A huge amount of suffering and pain come as a result of religious thinking. It's just that simple. And we know also for a fact, and it doesn't, you don't even have to research it. All you have to do is just look at the news, just basic statistics. We know for an absolute fact that the more religious a society is, the worse off it is in overall societal health issues, ranging from economy to education to human rights violations. Like Tennessee just wrote a law, I'm not sure if it passed, but they wrote a law saying that gay people can't, or was it transgender people can't adopt children. So you have an adoption system with, I think, what is it, average of 50,000 children per year eligible for adoption. Less than 10,000 of them get adopted, yet the Christian organizations in this country want to make it illegal for a good family to adopt a kid. I mean, this party of religious fanatics, it was the Tea Party that took over the Republican Party some years back, I think with the Bush administration. Oh shit, I lost my train of thought.
You were talking about adoption and the foster care system.
Yeah, there's every time you turn around, religion does something that harms a group of people. And it's not just hating a gay person or loving a gay person, like they say, loving the person, hating the sin. It's not just as simple as that. They make it impossible for people to live in some sense. There are no protections for LGBTQ members in a lot of states. So you could be gay and evicted or even denied housing. You could be gay and fired or not even hired at a job because these people aren't protected, and it's because of religious bullshit. It's just that simple. I find it hard to locate stories where religion actually did something good. It's a challenge for me to do this on a weekly basis because the vast majority of the things that religion does outweigh any possible good they could do. That's kind of where I stand on it. That's why I guess at the end of the day, when you really want to break it down and get to the nitty-gritty of it, it's that religion is an immoral system that harms and hurts people, and it harms society in general. And that's not just locally. You can look at states like Alabama or Georgia or Tennessee, southern states in the Bible Belt, where there's a lot of religiosity. These are states that fall super low in educational standards. These are places that fall super low in hate crime, or super high in hate crimes. And if you look at the world, don't even just look at the US, but look at the world, the most religious countries on the face of the planet have the worst education systems, the highest human rights violations. It's just, it's so obvious when you kind of look at it from an unbiased worldview and kind of you're standing outside of it point, where you look at these very hyper religious places and you see the most stupidity.
Oh, the statistics just don't lie.
Yeah, and then one of my favorite things, and this is more comical than anything else, but it is one of my favorite things. Pornhub releases their usage data every year, and I eat that shit up with graham crackers and milk, man. I love that when they do it because it shows my point. The porn usage, the most porn usage in the world is the most religious places in the world. The most porn usage in the United States are the most religious states in the United States. This shit can't be made up. This shit can't be made up. It's too fucking comical. And it really does show that no matter what they say, they're full of shit. We see a lot of it on TikTok. Porn is bad. We see a lot of this on TikTok.
All the time.
One guy's just wrapped up in it, like it's his whole MO. And here's another good. Banned. Oh yeah. Here's another good point to this. We know for a fact, from a scientific standpoint, that sex and masturbation are healthy. Again, in moderation. Obviously, all things in moderation. But this Christian notion that sex and masturbation is horrible and bad contradicts what we know from a scientific standpoint. And they still run with their bullshit. No matter what, they're going to run with it.
All you got to do is all you have to do is look into prostate health in men.
Yeah, exactly.
And how masturbation actually, and releasing all that and exercising that prostate can reduce all kinds of issues that you can have.
Cancer. You can reduce cancer. You can reduce prostate cancer by masturbating. This is
it's for your health, bud.
Yeah, and so religion denies that. And that's a problem. That's a real societal health problem. And that's just one thing. I mean, it's Jehovah's Witnesses denying blood transfusions. It's people taking, they'd rather faith heal themselves over actually going to get medicine, or the ones that do go get medicine and still claim God did it. Dude, you're getting treatments for 6 months. Thank the doctor, not your God. The doctor and the nurses are the ones that sacrifice their time, effort, and money to get the job they got to save your sorry ass. Thank the people who did the work.
Yep, and for the record, Mr. Ethan Lawless is out here dropping fucking bombs tonight, folks. As I say, out here dropping atheist bombs on them. No, that was good shit, Ethan. We'll even for our clips and the things we'll be using for Instagram and Twitter and all that.
I'll throw a few on TikTok, make me popular,
conversations
man.
With you and Steve and you and myself, and just some of your rants. We're gonna make you TikTok famous, motherfucker. But no, tons of great shit, and for I think the first time, I really don't have a lot of questions because you fucking nailed it. So I'm sitting there trying to take notes, and I'm like, well, I don't know really what to say. Here's what I would ask.
Go ahead.
This is something that I get asked, and you and I are similar as far as our demeanor and dropping fucking F-bombs and fuck this and fuck that, but and people automatically think we're these like raging lunatics that just hate God and hate Christians and hate the Bible, and somebody hurt us and now we're just bitter and all the shit that you speak,
love
right?
that fucking
tart, if you will.
Yeah. Yep. Tart. We're tarty.
We're tarty.
We're a little tart to the tongue.
That's a saucy meatball.
I'm the George Carlin School of Language. There's no such thing as a bad word until it's used in a negative context. If I'm cussing, it's because I fucking feel like it. But if I put my finger in somebody's chest and say, "Hey, fuck you," well then yeah, take it as derogatory because that's how I meant it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, shut the fuck up. It's just a word.
Yeah, and that's even how I teach my kids. Like it's a fucking word. Like period.
Words are not inherently bad.
Yeah, and if people around you want to make it bad and they want to try to minimize your intelligence or who you are, your character, because you said fuck, says more about their intelligence level than it did yours.
They're sensitive.
I think it was Dillahunty that said language is our bitch. So
yeah, yep.
But we should get into that Q&A.
Yep, we're getting ready to. But my last question, and just keep it 2, 3, 4 minutes, Ethan. I think it'll probably be.
I'll try to keep it a little bit shorter than that because I know you guys are on a time frame.
Well, no, we want to respect your time and the listeners because we do a Q&A.
Okay.
So we want to make sure that they can jump in if they want to. So I'm going to take my atheist hat off.
Uh-oh.
I'm going to put my Christian hat on.
Woo-hoo.
Okay. And I'm going to ask you, Ethan, why are you so aggressive?
Okay. I do get asked this question a lot, and I never really have a good answer for it. I was thinking about it when you guys mentioned me coming on the show because I figured it would come up. I'm aggressive and I'm angry as an atheist because we're wasting time. In the last hour that we've had this conversation, hour 10 minutes, and we've been having this conversation, how many people have died due to insufficient medical care or due to some other religious aspect of their lives? How many gay kids were kicked out of their homes? My basis for my atheism is 100% my humanism. My anger and disrespect for religion, my contempt for these thoughts have nothing to do with my humanism. I still am very much humanistic. I still care about the person, and I do not want to see them suffer. But their ideas are hog shit, and somebody's suffering as a result of it. What about the gay person? There's something else that came up recently that's become, I've seen quite a few of these new videos on TikTok where a gay person came out of being gay because Jesus. How many people right now, this second, are sitting in a corner of their apartment or sitting somewhere out on the street, cold and hungry, crying because they're gay? And nobody loves them right now because Jesus. They've been completely ostracized. They even hate themselves because Jesus. This is heart-shattering to me. To know that, or not even just gay, just the 15-year-old who said, "Mom, I don't believe in God." Or, "Mom, I disagree with your worldview on this in regards to religion or something else." How many people right this second are suffering as a direct result of somebody else's religious belief? And that's why I'm angry. That's why I'm aggressive. Because the system isn't moral. It's broken. And they live in this. What the hell is that goddamn video game where the entire premise is you're taking a fucking pill and everybody looks happy all the goddamn time? The Happy Few, I think, is the name of the video game. I can't remember. But you're the antagonist in this video game where you stop taking the pill and start realizing that happy meal you've been eating is actually a dead fucking rat. We got to get people off this happy pill and start realizing or start seeing the reality of the consequences of their beliefs and actions. Religion hurts people. End of story. There is no happy ending to that bullshit.
Damn, bro.
That
So
really
you went from or I'm sorry, not you. We went from chopping it up and laughing, and you just drove it home. And for anybody that asks why atheists can tend to get aggressive or assertive or what appears to be angry, Ethan, please believe we're going to use that as a clip, brother.
Absolutely. Be my guest, man. You can TikTok share the shit out of that. Because that's the honest to God truth. My atheism is built entirely on my humanism, my empathy for other people. And there's a video I'm kind of heated into right now where this chick is describing homosexuality as a sin, and that because she's Christian, she loves everybody and wants to bring them away from sin. And she uses some kind of truck in a road analogy. Velociraptor, you're on there with me. I really don't like her. If this is who she is genuinely as a person, I don't like her. If it's just a simple problem of her being convinced of something, then fine, great. There's the opportunity that you can convince her otherwise. But I don't think that's the case with her. I think she's
Just a
lost.
shitty person.
Just a shitty person. Failing to and here's something else that ties this kind of shit together. Christians don't take into consideration that their entire worldview is so anti-American and anti-freedom. It's insane. They do not understand that if they expect every single other person to live their lives according to their beliefs, not our own beliefs, but their beliefs. I mean, how do they not understand that? They expect me as an individual entity unto myself with my own thoughts, feelings, and everything else to live my life by their rules because they believe it.
It'd be like Sharia law. It's a theocracy.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's absolute theocracy. It's dictatorship. It's fascism. It's nonsense, and they don't register that. They live in a country.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, they live in a country where they have privilege. Absolute fucking privilege, and they can get away with saying bullshit like that. But if they lived in a country where Christians were truly persecuted, not one of them would say that bullshit.
Yep. And you know, Ethan, again, yeah, man, that last that last 5 minutes,
you got me all fucked up.
You were dropping A-bombs. I don't even know what the fuck to say at this point. Like, fucking turn the cameras off.
I've been doing this. Like, it's been a preoccupation of mine for at the very least the last 8 years.
Yep. Well, and what I can tell, and I love your passion, man. And I think I've even told you that just in private messages.
Yeah.
Like I love your intensity. And I can always, you know, I can sniff out like people that are like they put the sauce on because they know it's going to get attention. I can sniff that out. But yours is authentic. Yours is genuine, and that's why I love it. If it was put on, or I smelled it, you were just putting sauce on the wing, you know, I would, you know, you would have never been on here. But I know it's the real deal. And
it's not a stretch to say that my anger is genuine. That my frustration with the system and the damage that it does is not.
But you know what? It's cool because any Christian tries to tell you that why are you so angry? You shouldn't be so angry. Tell them, well, even Jesus had righteous indignation when he went to the temple to start turning over fucking tables. So don't tell me that I can't be angry.
That's another thing with this fucking shit. You're not supposed to be preaching in public because it's thought or it's seen by God as false preaching. And yet these jackasses are pressing this shit on social media like it's a fucking hot taco on a Tuesday. It's kind of a contradiction.
I'd say kind of.
Yeah, but the bottom line is what got you to where you're at today has produced a man that is. Here's what I love about it is I love guys like you and I and Steve and even Jesus and Pasta, because I think we all have this trait just because of life where it's like we can be like we can come off in certain scenarios like we're just complete assholes, right? And we don't give a shit. But when you hear the reason why we're like that, the reason why we're as intense or passionate or aggressive as we are, you're like, oh, whoa. Okay, now I have to reconsider how I feel about this individual because it's the same thing that I'm sure the three of us here all the time is like, man, I thought you were a dick, but once I got to know you, like you're a cool motherfucker.
Time.
I use this to squash arguments a lot. When I bring up these points that you guys are liking in this conversation right now, in a comment section of a video, somebody asked me, well, why aren't you just leaving Christianity alone? If you don't like it and you don't want to be a part of it, why don't you just ignore it? And I tell them this shit. I said, because it causes damage, and here's the damage it causes. They don't comment back.
Yep.
I never get a return comment on this bullshit ever.
But not only that, I'm gonna say this, and then I'm gonna introduce Jesus Mike in here because he wants to comment and ask a couple questions. But at the end of the day, like until you get to know me, it doesn't matter. Like you can have all the assumptions you want, of me, and you can make all the comments about it in the world, but until you take the time to get to know me and what has driven me to where I'm at today, guess what? I don't really give two shits in the wind what you do or don't think. But if you get to know me, you'll understand that I'm the most giving, loving, compassionate, empathetic human being that you'll encounter in the next couple of days. And there's people better than me.
And that's something that I want. That's a really good point, and I kind of want to expound on that a little bit. Yes, I'm angry. Yes, I get frustrated, and it's not even just repeating myself that does it to me. One of the things Christians do that absolutely pushes me over the limit, where I will go from 0 to 60, 120 anger, just lose my mind, is when they try to tell me who I am, what I think, where I came from. When they, in their arrogance, and that's what it is, it's pure arrogance, sit there and assume that I must have been hurt as a child, or I hate God, or any other number of assumptions that they can come up with to demonize or victimize me in their eyes. I am nobody's victim. My life has been hard, and I've been through some real shit. I am to this day not a fucking victim of it. Victimhood is a mentality. I am not a victim of the things that have happened to me, and I don't blame or hate God. I don't believe in him. Can't blame or hate something you don't believe in. And so religious people who make these assumptions about our personalities or what we've been through in our lives are really digging hard at being some of the most arrogant people on the planet.
And those are just the defense mechanisms set out by the religion itself.
Oh, absolutely.
That's all it is.
And I'll say this, and then Mike, Jesus, Mike, I'm going to open it up to you. Here's what is, Ethan, Steve, Jesus, Mike, anybody listens in the future. Here's what I have found. Coming from 30 something years of being surrounded by Christianity and being raised in it, and where I'm at today is Christians that are either indoctrinated or completely blinded by their love for a God. They absolutely, and I'm going to address what Ethan just said, because I have to defend this all the time. Christians fucking hate that you don't need their safety blanket to feel good. They hate that you don't need their God to complete you. They hate that you don't need to pray to him 20 times a day when you're not just fucking feeling good. Like they hate it. Why do they hate it? Because they can't do it. They need that safety blanket. They need that little warm blanket to wrap around them and make them feel good, right? And that doesn't mean they're dumb. That doesn't mean they're stupid. That doesn't mean they're emotionally unintelligent. That just means that they have bought into the safety blanket that's not there, and they hate that you aren't doing it, because that makes them feel better if you're doing it. It's again, it comes down to psychology. So that's their biggest battle, is they hate that you aren't buying into that blanket.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's difficult sometimes because of how they behave to separate the person from the ideology. And I'm not perfect. I will screw up. I will attack a person individually for whatever reason. And I'll correct myself. I'll come around and apologize for it later. TikTok is a difficult medium to do this. The conversation's limited. The best you can do is back and forth videos. But when you run into people that we talked about, one TikToker that all of us have dealt with, who is really good at wordplay. But what he's doing in reality is just moving or bending the goalposts to suit his side of it. He wants to make the conversation even. Well, that's not how it works. It's going to be one-sided, because one side has the facts and the other side has, but I feel it.
or philosophical whatever.
Yeah, philosophy is a lot of mumbo jumbo. It's useful when it's useful, and it's garbage when it's garbage. So I don't remember his name. Sorry, I kind of spaced there for a second. Yeah, whenever you guys are ready, we can move into Q&A.
I think that sounds good.
No Yep. So wherever the Jesus Michael is, we'll have him in. Oh, there he is. Look. This is how you know we're a real atheist organization. Jesus himself comes into the screen.
What's
Probably
up, y'all?
all hell.
I have been
check
cheating.
this magic trick I learned. Everything that goes on this side disappears. Ready? Wait for it. Oh God, I'm gone. Okay.
I know that you guys probably know that one guy who cosplays Jesus.
Which one?
Oh, on TikTok?
There's a few.
Yeah, on TikTok.
He's got 1.1 million followers.
Yeah,
he is false prophet, by the way.
Oh, I love between him and you, Mike. I love both of you. I really do.
Sure. But he's a false prophet, not just on me.
Real quick.
He's a false prophet. He's a false prophet on a guy who did an original TikTok Jesus. He might be the same guy, and I'm just getting them confused with each other.
Well, this guy's kind of like he doesn't believe in Jesus, but he uses humor more or less. Like, he's a funny guy. Like, his videos are entertaining.
Sure.
Is he the dude that
look in my life? There's only one true.
Austin?
In my life, there's only one true Jesus, and like even today, I told Tia, I was like, "Man, I'm about to go call this motherfucker Jesus," and she was like, "That shit never gets old."
Yeah, and I mean, I've just had so many people call me that now, where I feel like it's my fucking name over Mike. So, but Ethan, man, that was a really good conversation. A lot of what you said, especially in the why, really got me thinking. Wow, that's what I think, but that's a better way of describing it. What I think. So I think I look up to you a lot in that regard. It seems that you have a really good ability to portray what you're saying in a way that I think atheists wish that they could do. Right? You see what I'm saying?
Well, right, and here's the problem with artists are always self-defeatist. I don't see myself that way, like, at all. I feel like I fail as an atheist every time I turn around and I listen to you guys, especially you, Mike. I listen to you and I'm like, fuck, I'm lacking, dude. This guy is so much better at this shit than me.
Well,
no,
it's like we were talking about before. Everybody has a different style. Everybody has a different way of approaching an issue or discussing things with somebody, and everybody responds differently to different styles. So where me and Austin may have a little bit of a softer approach or a little bit more of understanding. Atheist Jesus is a little bit more on the logical side, and let's just stick to the facts. And Ethan, you're the one who takes it and bashes them over the head with it, and some people fucking need that.
Yeah,
it's the only way that they'll understand.
It's very true. You have a way that gets people to just immediately
you appeal to the emotional.
Well, yeah, exactly. I guess that's a good way to put it, because you have a way that appeals to. It's like you'll say things that I am not already. It's not like I don't already agree or think of those things. But you'll say things where I'm like, wow, I spend a lot more time trying to formulate how to say these things. Whereas you'll say it and my emotions immediately like perked, like like a dog, my ears are perked up. Like I'm like, I really like how that was worded. You instilled the emotion that I wish I could instill almost in that regard.
Well, and so like, I'm not good with things like the ontological argument or all that bullshit. I don't understand the philosophy. I don't understand the the names of the various types of arguments, and I'm just starting to learn the logical fallacy points in these, and I barely understand those half the time. My arguments for atheism and against theism come from as a direct result of the consequences that I see in the world. So it's going to have more, I think, honestly, it's going to have more of an emotional connotation to it than it would if it was just the logical portion of the argument.
Sure. Well, and so for me, I mean, I had a question to start off with, but it doesn't, and I don't want to seem like I'm segueing into something different.
No,
it didn't have to necessarily do with these kind of logical, arguments or philosophical arguments or anything on that subject. But for me, I've wanted to ask you this question because it seems to be a prevalent question, or at least assertion made by theists, but we don't usually get the type of people that go through it to actually answer the question, and typically because they die. So there's the famous kind of theist statement, which is there are no atheists in foxholes, and you went through a pretty we don't have to go through the details.
Oh no, we can do the details. I'm happy to explain it to people.
Sure. I guess all I'll say before I pass it off to you is that my question is, what do you is that statement true? The fact that you've had to live through this. I mean, presumably, I would assume I'm fair. First off, am I fair to assume that this question applies to what you went through?
Oh, it's applied to what I'm going through. Absolutely.
Sure.
And no, it's not necessarily true. I was diagnosed with a very rare form of kidney disease. It was an autoimmune disease back in March of 2012. By September of 2012, I went from acute to chronic kidney failure. So my two kidneys that I was born with died. In October of 2013, I received a kidney transplant. And things were very good for a long time. As early as October of last year, we started to see signs of rejection of that transplanted kidney. This happened because, and it's actually common, I think there's like a percentage, 60 some odd percent of people who received a transplant will reject within 10 years because they struggle to maintain their medications. And that's kind of what happened to me. And so I have had several complications with this kidney transplant, kidney functions, and there's a lot of complications. One of them very nearly has killed me. I actually had to get helicopter ambulatory from one hospital to another at one point back in 2012. I think it was in September, actually, or maybe in November. And even more recently, with the kidney rejection, there is the idea that I've had a few minor strokes. It's caused heart condition. It's caused hypertension to the extent that I could have a massive stroke at any minute. And I try to stay on my medication as best I can. There's a lot stacked against me. And as more recent, the kidney rejection itself has reached the stage where the kidney is swollen. I am basically constantly in a state of soreness or pain. And sometimes it gets to be kind of breathtaking on occasion, and urinating blood. And so right now, currently, my medical team and I are trying to figure out how we're going to deal with that. It could be steroids. It could be another surgery. We don't know yet. The surgery puts me at a lot of risk. I could lose some of the function in my right leg if the surgery doesn't go perfectly, because there's so much scar tissue built up in the transplant area. All of that said, understanding my mortality has been a thing I've been dealing with for the past 7 to 8 years. Well, 6 or 7 years. And again, that said, it does not dissuade me in any way from being an atheist. It does not make me desire Christianity or a God. It does not make me desire an afterlife. I think there's a lot of confusion with Christians when it comes to atheism. Like, yes, a lot of atheists would be comforted by the idea of an afterlife. It sounds amazing. I would love to go to a place where I can ride motorcycle and hang out with my friends and family for all of eternity. I would love that. That would be epic. But I don't have the evidence to support it, and I have no good reason to believe that it's going to happen. So I don't. The concept or the phrasing that there's no such thing as an atheist in a foxhole is disingenuous, and it's a Christian arrogancy trying to tell people who and what they are and what they think. There is actually a guy who works with the atheist experience on YouTube. I cannot remember his name, but he actually has a disease that's absolutely going to kill him, and he has a podcast about it.
He has ALS.
Yeah, ALS, and his podcast is Dying Out Loud or something like that. And no, you'll absolutely find an atheist in a foxhole. We understand that this life is our one and only life, and we have no reason to believe there's a one beyond this.
And to add to that point, I think if it was me and if I was in a foxhole, I would much rather be in a foxhole with an atheist who is going to fight for their life than a Christian who's going to bend over and just pray that they get into the afterlife or something.
Right. I want the guy who's going to try to tactically assess the situation from an intellectual standpoint to try to save our lives, then be there with the one who's going to panic, freak out, and start praying to God before he succumbs to death. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Whoops, sorry.
Ethan,
I think that's a
we
good
do have a
good answer.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have I want to make sure we get to a couple of the questions on here. So we have a question from one of the listeners, Mr. Spartan.
Mr. Spartan.
And he said, who is Ethan's favorite popular atheist?
Oh, man, that's a hard one to answer. I have a lot of favorite atheists, but to be perfectly honest, I think the one that I've learned the most from would be Christopher Hitchens. To be perfectly honest, I've watched almost every debate that man has had. One of my favorite ones is with him and Stephen Fry against the Catholic Church on Intelligence Squared. Watching him trounce the shit out of Reverend Jackson or whatever his name is. I don't even know. Dude doesn't even have a church, calls himself a reverend. Watching him trounce the shit out of people like William Lane Craig. And oh man, Christopher Hitchens is a magical, magical man. He was a lot of fun to watch and learn from.
But my favorite was watching him absolutely demolish Turk.
Oh, absolutely.
I just
Turk.
I don't know why, but Turk just drives me nuts.
Turk backpedaled himself so much. It's actually a little bit painful, and I almost have empathy for him.
Yeah, that one was. If you were a theist, that was difficult to watch. If you were atheist, you were like, "Yep, good job, Hitch. Way to drop the bombs on him."
Yeah.
All right. Any of our other listeners? We got a few people on here. Anybody else have questions for Ethan? Or even Steve or myself as atheists, usually theists when they jump on and we have an atheist guest, they want to ask questions and really it's no holds barred. You can ask what you want, and I don't necessarily guarantee that you'll like the answer that you get, but we will be respectful. We will be kind. And our response and any the guys that are involved in the roundtable, they already know it, but even the atheist guests that we have on, I coach them before we get on that we have a certain reputation that we want to build, that we are we're going to be us, we're going to have our personalities, but we're always going to be respectful and not be not be complete assholes when we respond. So if you have any questions, let us know. But in the meantime, what's that?
We actually have more.
Oh, go ahead, Jesus. My bad.
If you didn't, I have them already written down. Well, yeah, we have a couple. We have two questions. The first one is from Grumpy Old Cuss, and he says, "What is a good answer when someone says you are just angry with God?"
The best answer I have found for people who say that shit to me is yeah, and I'm fucking justified in it. It's just that simple. My anger with religion is justified. It's absolutely justified. The amount of damage that religion does, as I've said earlier, it justifies my anger. I'm allowed to be mad at a system that hurts people, causes suffering and death.
And even though a character is fictional, we can still hate him.
Oh, absolutely. Like, you ever watch a movie, any movie? Like you watch movies like, say, the Avengers. I think there's a lot of empathy towards Thanos, but at the end of the day, everybody disagrees with him. I'll say you like watch a movie. Nope, I don't know how many people are really rooting for Jason or Michael Myers. The bad guy, nobody really wants to see the bad guy win.
I'm kind of a bad guy win guy, but that's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah. No, like, I love cinema in the sense that it can really confuse kind of you understand what Thanos is about, and what he says does make sense. But at the same time, you want there to be a better solution than his solution. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you'd rather see species come together and do a better job than have to wipe out half the species to solve the problem. We can always do better than what we're doing, and we do. That's something else that religion doesn't give humanity credit for. We started out as bands of idiots who didn't know our assholes from a hole in the ground, and now we've built a great big huge society, multiple societies all over the planet.
Sure.
And if we were as bad as religion makes human beings out to be, we wouldn't have the population expansion we've had in the last 30 years alone. When I was a kid, when I was born in 1982, and I actually looked this up, the world population was like 5.5 billion. It's creeping up on 8 billion in 2020.
Almost double.
Yeah. And so, like, that says a lot about our moral guides, what puts us together as a species across borders, across cultures, across everything. We still are getting better at what we do.
Sure. I wanted to butt in real quick because we actually have a popular theist, probably one of the most popular theists in terms of the internet, that just popped in. You guys might know him by Darth Dawkins. He asked the question, if atheism is a lack of belief, why do you choose a term that denotes the denial of God?
Atheism is not a term for the denial of God. That is Christian wordplay at its worst. Agnosticism isn't a position. Atheism is. Agnosticism is a feeling.
Yeah, basically, atheism is the lack of belief.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're increasing in viewership here. We just about doubled our viewership once Darth got on, so I assume we have some kind of this is being streamed to something. He wants to know if he can come on. I'm not sure about what our limits are on regards to this, and I probably should know better as the producer of this for tonight's episode. I don't know if that interests you, Ethan, at all.
Absolutely, bring it.
I've had a couple conversations with him on this, but
just beware my personality.
Well, we will dive into a lot of contingent facts about reality. We will dive into a lot of what is necessary. We will dive into a lot of philosophical word salad. If you are okay with that,
I will try to avoid. I will stop at philosophical word salad and let you guys handle that nonsense. Like I said before, my atheism is built on the concept that religion damages society at a statistical and provable level. That's kind of my wheelhouse, and that's where I stay.
Sure. I mean, and I want to say it's up to anybody else on the show. We're towards the tail end of it, so we weren't necessarily expecting that type of a celebrity theist, so to speak.
Well, another thing that we could do is we could set something up and have him on as a guest at a later date if he's open to that.
And I'm open to debate.
Probably not. I would assume he would. I'm assuming he would probably want to be on now, but it's just dependent on your guys' time, the viewers' time. Well, I mean, I guess I can't get an answer on all the viewers' time, but I guess it would just be dependent on your guys' time.
Yeah, I got time.
So I got.
Yeah, I got time. I have no issue.
You'll
have to excuse me for a second to grab something to drink, though.
I was going to say we might want to take a quick break, but.
Yeah, my thing is I don't want to give the link out in the comments on here. I would rather, well, I guess I could give the link in the comments and just not accept people in. I just know that there are certain types of people that like to do things that are not,
So Jesus, here's what we're going to do so we can keep this clean just from a production standpoint. So I'd love to have him on, but I want to respect the fact that this was Ethan's time on the roundtable. So what we're going to do is we're going to end it here, and I'm going to personally create a new live feed. I'd love to have him on, and all the people that have jumped on, please come back on. Give us about 5 or 10 minutes to get everything created. And Jesus, do you have the contact information for him to get him the link?
That's kind of where I'm at. I'm just in the situation where I want to make sure I can give him the information. I'm not very, as somebody who's a computer programmer, I'm not exactly trustworthy of the end-to-end encryption with StreamYard. So I just want to make sure that I can give it to Darth. I trust.
Well, that's
Darth,
what I'm saying.
Because I know
you have
his
an email
intentions.
address?
I know his intentions.
Do you have an
just
email
to talk
address?
about this. I have Discord. I don't know how he would get in touch with me on there, so I guess you can just email me. I'll give him my shitty email that my friend made for me. @gmail.com. Email me, Darth. All right. So Darth, I sent you a message in the thing. Anybody want to email there? That's some email my friend put together in there. So if you guys want to email me there, you can. Filled with a bunch of porn that he stashed me on spam-wise, but I use it for this kind of thing, so it'll work. Kidding all aside.
All right, so all that aside, Jesus, I'll let you handle getting everybody on or off or whatever. But as far as the roundtable is concerned, again, Ethan, thank you for your time tonight on this portion, and we'll get you included on, I guess, what's going to be the after party.
Sounds like a plan. I love it. I love after parties, man. Let's go.
Oh, and Jack, I'm sorry, hold on. Jack wants to get on, and I had talked to Jack earlier today, actually. I don't know if Jack probably doesn't really know me. I'm Atheist Jesus on Discord, but we need to get Jack on here as well. If Darth's coming on, Jack is also coming on board. That is a show I would love to produce every day and any day, all day. So Jack, Darth, you're both more than welcome. I hope that doesn't turn Darth off, but we'll figure that out. So,
and hey, the more, to be honest, I'm down to be challenged on any of my ideas. You guys kind of lit a fire under my ass by putting me on the show in the first place. Yeah. And I feel like this is a good medium for me to get a lot of shit off my chest that's been repressed because TikTok sucks at this shit. So kind of, I'm down with whatever. Yeah, just take a 5-10 minute breaks. Email me the link, and I'm definitely down.
Yep. All right. So for clarity, we're to close out the roundtable portion of this because I want to respect people's time and the effort they put into actual podcast. So again, Ethan, thank you. You were fucking amazing tonight. And you kicked ass.
Thank you for having me.
You were out here dropping bombs on them. And then Steve, your first one, man, with the round table being the co-host. Great fucking job, my man. Very proud of you. You delivered, man. You
had good questions, man. Thanks a lot.
Well, I learned note taking from Austin, so we got to give him all the credit for that.
But no, Steve, I appreciate that, man. You were awesome, and then of course Jesus Mike in the background doing the production. Thank you, my man, and I'm look forward to having you back on with me this weekend. And then Pasta Man, he was taking care of business tonight, so he couldn't be here. But as always, that is my homie, and he'll be here in the future. So in the meantime, y'all know what it is. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. Fuck shit up. Peace.
Yep. We'll be back in just a few minutes. So the 17 people watching, just stay fucking right there. Jack off for a few minutes or do whatever it is that you do, and come back on in just a little bit. And,
go boost those poor.
Or unless you're a TikTok theist, in that case, like it's 11 o'clock, so this is about the time that you need to watch out for those types of things. Otherwise, Jack, Darth,
it's their bedtime.
I'm sending you the links. I want to preface this before we get off the air. I have no intention of just disrespecting Darth in terms of inviting Jack onto here. I do think that that's a good conversation to be had. If Darth's intention is to talk to someone specifically here and he doesn't want Jack involved, just explain that to me. But it would be nice just to kind of have people involved in that, and especially where we can bridge the communities kind of together, because that's what our channel is here to do.
Yeah, I'm in a little bit of a mood. Yep. So if Darth has a hard on for me, I'm all for it.
and just for the listeners, and then for the listeners, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to end the broadcast so we can start a new feed. Our limit on this platform is 6 people. So we'll add 2, and if that means we need to rotate, we'll rotate, but we'll add 2, and that's it. And I'm